Good morning, Fab Fam. Today I'm going to be starting a new segment called Monday Sip. This is just where I'm going to be having some random ramblings about the game while having my morning coffee, some French press. And today, let's talk about the topic on everyone's mind right now. I certainly have some thoughts on it, things I want to say. The BNR update. So first of all, if you don't know what the BNR update is, was, there is no BNR update. They announced that nothing will be happening as of right now. They announced a few more battle hardens and said basically giving the opportunity for Starvo to hit Living Legend. If I'm not mistaken, it's a calling and 3 CC battle hardens, and he needed to win the calling. I'm sorry, 4 CC battle hardens. He needed to win the calling and 3 of the battle hardens. I might be off on that slightly, the number of battle hardens that were CC, but he needed to win almost everything to hit Living Legend. And essentially saying that we're giving him the opportunity to hit Living Legend before the Pro Tour, and then we're going to have another BNR update before the Pro Tour. That's partly there, I believe, just so that they can make the announcement that if he hits Living Legend, he is now Living Legend. I think they have to do it on the BNR update. Again, correct me if I'm wrong on that. And potentially more changes there, and they use some verbiage along the lines of like, this is a chance for us to have a new metagame tackled by the pro players at the Pro Tour. So again, no changes in the ban list. Potentially changes like a week before the Pro Tour. So let's just jump into it. What are my thoughts about the BNR update? First of all, do I think there needed to be a ban? I was fine with the format. Playing Prism and Guardian, I'm like anecdotally I was okay with this, but I did see that there were problems with it. So do I think there needed to be a ban? Yes, but for the reason of not balance so much as just enjoyment of the format. It led to a lot of unfun games for a lot of players, and I think giving people another month or so of this not funness, not a real word, but you know what I mean, is a negative play experience for a lot of people. Anyone playing in the callings or battle hardens or down to armories. Arsenal Pass, I think it was Brendan Patrick made a comment about that, basically being like, this is really not great for people playing the game on a casual level for the next like month or so. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that the majority of your players aren't these pro players. So giving the majority of people a negative play experience isn't a good look for the game and just isn't fun. So in that aspect, I think something needed to happen. I think the biggest thing though is they really needed to just kind of stick to their guns on the whole thing of uh, just make a choice. Either ban something or don't ban something. None of this like wishy-washy, well, we're not gonna today, maybe we'll ban something later, you'll have to find out. Fuck that. What? Just pick something and stick to it. I think that's my biggest issue with the whole thing, and most people's biggest issue with the whole thing. I would have been fine with no bans. I would have been fine with a light ban. I would have been fine with an early Living Legend on Starvo. Something. But do it then. Don't do it a month later. Now, if, I was driving the bus per se, and I got to pick what happened, what do I think should have happened for bannings? I think the big one is Awakening. And also Scalata. The Scalata Sonata interaction, I think, is a bit of a problem for the future. But both of these cards, Scalata and Sonata, the biggest problem I have with them isn't necessarily right now. I think they're oppressive right now, but they put a stranglehold on future card design where now every single Guardian action ever printed needs to be balanced around the fact that Awakening exists. Every single Runeblade card needs to be balanced around Scalata existing. And I think that's not something that you want as a designer for the game, where you just constantly have to be designing around these cards existing of, did this break the game again? Um, it it's just not great, because then you run into more oops, the game's broken again situations. It's part of the reason, like, if you're a Magic player, it's similar to the thought process of Birthing Pod of, now we have to balance this card around every creature ever printed. That's not something that you want, and running into oops, this is broken scenarios with it. So I think on that basis alone is enough to get rid of them. And right now is an example of them not being balanced. And that's all you really need to be like, yeah, these are a problem, get rid of them before it becomes more of a problem, because this theoretically could be the tip of the iceberg with cards like that. We could run into more broken scenarios with them. I think that the big thing with Awakening also is that it invalidates aggro decks and basically pushed them completely out of the metagame, where the Starvo player can be losing, fall behind, and they just have this catch-up mechanic that catapults them way further ahead than they should be, where they are, by all rights, losing this game. Oops, I win. Let me just get a 2-card 14 damage and also -4 your next attack. So now I'm getting a value of 18 out of 2 cards. That's insane. I'm getting an average of 9 per card. That is so above curve. And how are you supposed to race that? You can't. Your only option is never be higher life than the Starvo as the aggro deck. That's hard. That's just not intuitive to what your deck is trying to do. That just defeats the point of being an aggro deck if you're trying to do that. Like, yes, that counterplay exists, but and by doing that, it pushed all the, as I said, push all the aggro decks out. But then without aggro, that lends the format to being more greedy. It lets things like Prism exist without any real counter, because things like that need aggro to keep them in check. So it just creates multiple layers of problems. So that on its own, I think that just needed to go. I don't think anything else really needed to happen with the deck. I could have understood an errata on the pulses. I think that's unnecessary if the deck is already going to be hitting Living Legends soon. Like, maybe that ends up mattering in the future for like another hero that's multi-element. But I think that's more of just a change on how fusing works, where each card can only reveal for one element or something. But like, I don't even want to humor that thought, because I don't feel like it necessarily matters. I'm also just not a fan of errataing. It lends itself to making the game more confusing to people trying to get into the game. And this is a new growing game. You do not want to make the barrier of entry even higher of, now you need to understand what all the cards do. Oh, and by the way, you need to go read all these text documents, because the cards don't actually do what they say. We still haven't even gotten the Briars with the errata on them. I think if you're going to do something like that, you have to do something like mailing out promos to stores and just give them to players for free with the errata text, which is not something you really want to be doing with a Majestic. So I'm just not a big fan of erratas in general. So I think the answer is just get rid of the cards that are not only a problem right now, but a problem in the future. I feel like I rambled enough about that. So next thought being, what does the meta look like if Starvo gets Living Legend or banned, or something happens that either removes Starvo from the meta or pushes it down significantly within the meta, like an Awakening ban or something. Assuming nothing else happens. Like, just take the meta we have, Starvo stonks down. This is my initial impression of the meta, not a perfect prediction. Obviously, there's no way I could know. But just my initial thoughts on what would happen. Well, Starvo. Well, first of all, Viserai is, I think, the clear winner here. Viserai is already one of the strongest decks in the metagame, and it's very good into Prism. So, with one of its natural counters out of the meta, or not counter, but like one of its harder matchups out of the meta, it just becomes one of the default best decks in format, probably. Assuming it receives no bans. Um, Chain is already very good and just fine into any meta. That deck's just inherently broken. So I think that goes up in play too, but I don't think you'll see widespread success with it. I think it's going to be like select pockets of people doing well with it. It's a hard deck to play. And with Starvo out or Awakening out, the thing pushing down aggro decks is removed, therefore aggro decks start doing better. So we got our Lexis, our Briars, our Katsus, anything like that. I think that those now have legs in the meta, and if people keep playing Prism, they have more reason to be played because those decks prey on Prism. So we're basically looking at its like level one, you've got Runeblade gets better, aggro gets better. So the level two of that is, well, if Runeblade and aggro is the meta, uh, Ice and Guardian in general, just defensive decks like that, those probably see more play. Because Ice decks very good into degenerate aggro decks that are very just linear, I'm doing my thing. Oldhim, very good into those. It's both ice and defensive, so it's very good into those kinds of strategies. And then the level three, maybe Prism comes back and we see what happened during the Nationals season, where you got the level one Briar's best deck in format. Level two, well, play decks that beat Briar. Level three, those decks lose to Prism. So you could see something like that happen. But again, at its core, Runeblade good, aggro good, decks that counter Runeblade and aggro good. And then my last thought in the whole situation is just like the whole impact of this BNR update. I really hate how this impacted playtesting and everything. So how are we supposed to playtest for a format that we don't know? And their whole thing is, well, let's give them the pro players a chance to tackle a new metagame. You scheduled this at the end of the season, so clearly you didn't intend for this to be a new metagame format, but can't really 100% know that. That's speculation. It's really disrespectful to people's time. Like, this just rewards people that either have a team and or are able to just take a week off work or something like that, where they're just like, yeah, I'm just gonna no life flesh and blood for the next week. Not everyone can do that, and I don't feel like that's what the Pro Tour is intended to be showcasing. Just the like 30 people in the room that can no life the game. That's not necessarily the best people in the room, even. That's just the people that have the most free time. I, that might not get the best games on camera, even if you're going to go with the angle of good for spectating, because now the people that have the most free time might not be the best players. They just happen to have the most free time, and they had an edge on the meta in that aspect. I think that this is something that should be rewarding the highest skill players in the room, but that's my opinion. I don't believe they've ever explicitly said what the Pro Tour is supposed to be showcasing. That's just an assumption of mine. I, anecdotally, as a spectator, I don't want to see what I just described. I would rather see the best of the best duke it out in high skill games and just showcase who's the better player. And I don't feel like this does that. It also really punishes people that don't live in country and they're flying here, where they need to take a full day off just for flying, and that's time out of playtesting for them. And if there's a sudden development in the meta at the last second, well, they don't have their collection with them necessarily. So how are they supposed to adjust at the last second? There's so many problems I see with this. I think it's fine if you intended from the start for this to be a new meta experience, but so many people also planned around this happening of like, okay, I'm gonna make a run for the Pro Tour. I'm gonna book this ahead of time. I'm prepared for this. Oh, it's gonna be a new meta potentially. Well, I wouldn't have gone as hard trying to get my invite or booked this at all if I knew it was going to be something up in the air like that. I just wouldn't have gone. Um, I'm not speaking for myself in this scenario. I'm just like devil's advocating for people that could have thought that. Uh, I think it's just very disrespectful to a lot of people in the community that are actually participating in this, and I don't really see the benefit of it other than I don't really see much benefit from it being scheduled this way. All I can see is it's better for the spectators potentially if they don't want to watch this meta anymore. But we haven't even necessarily had that many events uh, like watched by the community because no one's really watching the Pro Quest that much. People are watching callings and Pro Tours, so there's been one calling that people could have watched. So I don't feel like it's that stale for spectators yet if that's all they interact with. Um, that's my take on it, anyways. Um, Let me know what you guys think about this. Like, first of all, like if you're going, what are your like? Let me know if you're going first of all to the Pro Tour, and then let me know what your thoughts on it is. Would you have done something different? Are you happy that there's bans? Would you rather see bans? Are you happy seeing that there's like a late ban? Maybe like I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts. If there's any topics that you guys would like to hear me ramble about in the future, let me know. I'm going to be doing some other content soon. I'm planning on doing a series of going over different game principles and how to kind of think through them soon. So stay tuned for that. I'll probably be doing some Prism content soon. And that's it from me today. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.